This is Syrian Girl. The media is painting the refugee crisis as an acute issue, but the Syrian war and refugees have been there for 4 years. And Aylan wasn't the first child refugee to drown. Last month, an 11-year-old Syrian girl drowned off the coast of Egypt. So why is there such a media push now? Well, it's just in time for when France, Britain and Australia were asked to join the US's war on Syria. In fact, the US asked Australia to join its coalition a week before Aylan died. So they're using sympathy for this child's death to drop bombs on more children while crying crocodile tears over them as they run from those bombs. Just look at this headline from The Sun. Bomb Syria for Aylan. You'd think they'd make themselves less obvious. This is the city that Aylan comes from. The area was bombed to smithereens by the US. Rupert Murdoch couldn't even wait for Aylan's body to go cold before he started exploiting it for more war in Syria. Turkey is also causing the refugee crisis to push for the creation of a buffer zone in Syria as part of their continued attempt at regime change. So, before you wave refugees welcome while letting your government get away with murder, there are a few things you need to know. The whole Syrian war and refugees were caused in the first place because the US and NATO backed Islamist rebels in Syria in 2011. In spite of this, politicians and the mass media are blaming the Syrian President Assad for Europe's entire refugee crisis and using that to convince people that there needs to be a war in Syria. But how can Assad be blamed for the entire refugee crisis when the majority of refugees aren't even Syrian, but either poor immigrant workers or refugees from other wars such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and Libya, all the other places that have suffered US interventions in recent years? Yet the media labels them all Syrian anyway to convince Europeans that this problem can be solved by intervention in Syria. They even go as far as to label sub-Saharan Africans as Syrian because they believe their viewers are too ignorant to notice the difference. How racist do you have to be to confuse Asia with Africa?
Romania's Coast Guard rescued 70 migrants, mostly Syrians and Iraqis, packed onto a small fishing boat that was in danger of sinking as they attempted to make the crossing to Europe in stormy seas on Saturday.
The number of Syrian refugees is also being falsely conflated because other immigrants and refugees are simply claiming to be Syrian and throwing their original passports away. Pakistani and Bangladeshi passports are being found discarded near border crossings.
Completed here, 29%.
We're just 4 Syrian
We're just
people.
4 Syria people.
Syria, all Iraq.
25 in Iraq.
Iraq.
All the rest of them are Iraqi?
And they said I don't have passport. I don't have anything to say who I am. So I'm Syrian. Where's your passport? I don't have, because the government in Germany allowed everything for the Syrian people. You get house, you get money, you get food.
So it pays to be Syrian.
Yes.
And some European politicians are exploiting the war in Syria to push for an open border immigration policy. So was it the Syrian government that caused these refugees? Or was it these same politicians and their liberal interventionists that are now crying over the refugees' deaths? People like Angelina Jolie, ironically the ambassador of the UN refugee program, caused these African refugees to drown off the coast of Libya because she supported the Libyan rebels who ethnically cleansed them. It was also Amnesty International who claimed Gaddafi was using black immigrants as mercenaries, which resulted in their ethnic cleansing. Now Amnesty International are raking in the donations over their deaths. It was these same liberal interventionists who in 2011 supported Al-Qaeda-affiliated rebels in Syria, and they dare yell, "Shame, shame, shame," for not letting in the Syrian refugees. How about shame on you for ruining our beautiful country? The refugee crisis didn't start when Syrians tried to cross into Europe, but when Europeans tried to cross into Syria to join ISIS. Syrians are being pushed out of their country while multinational Islamic State moves in from all over the world. But the so-called coalition on ISIS is a lie. The US and its allies have no intention of actually defeating ISIS. Instead of working with the Syrian army, the only force capable of fighting ISIS on the ground, They are preventing the Syrian army from doing their job. Only 4 years ago, Syria was a well-off and prosperous country that even accepted 2 million Iraqi refugees. Now, we've become the refugees. Syrian refugees want your help, yes, but to get back home to their own country. Almost half of Syria's population are refugees, 3 million outside of Syria, and 7 million of them are internally displaced inside Syria. Shouting refugees welcome, while well-meaning, is not enough. You're not going to be able to airlift 10 million Syrians into Europe. Displacing them further from their country is not ideal for anyone. The refugees want to come home. Hear them out for yourself.
حلمي هو إنه ترجع سوريا مثل ما كانت، لأنه أنا أول الناس اللي راح أرجع لها، لأنه بعد سوريا ما في، مهما طلعت وفتلت بعدها ما في.
My name is Rena. I wish to come back to the lovely country when the war will end.
I like the war to be end. Just I can go to see my friends and my family in Syria.
أمر خارجي بتمويل خارجي بس نحن عايشين وراح نرجع.
What's happening now? Happening by foreign hands. We are Syrian. We are a good people, and we wanna complete our life in Syria.
بشتاق لكل شيء لحارتنا، لبيتنا، لأهالينا، لجماعاتنا.
You just stop the war, and we don't want to go to Europe.
To help them come home, you need to pressure your government to stop the war in Syria by stopping the US's Saudi Arabian, Qatari and Turkish allies from funding and facilitating ISIS, by ending the political support for Al-Qaeda-linked rebels, and by preventing your government from entering a war against Syria. End the sanctions on Syria. Aylan Kurdi's dad's infected teeth pushed him to try to get to Europe and fix them. Sanctions on Syria prevented his family from sending the $14,000 required to fix them. If there were no sanctions on Syria, he would have got medical care at home and Aylan would still be alive. Before the war, medical care in Syria was free. Sanctions prevent Syria from rebuilding and fighting ISIS off itself. Rebuild Syria for refugees to return. Concentrate on donating to organizations that help refugees inside of Syria. This will decrease the pressure on refugee institutions inside of Syria and help external refugees return, instead of getting on a cracky boat and drowning on the way to Europe. Here are two such organizations, Wafa Relief and the Syrian Red Crescent. The Syrian government wants refugees to return and have put forward a plan to do so. They have asked for help in implementing that plan. Blaming the refugees themselves for the wars NATO creates is not the solution. Suddenly, so many people are disrespecting Syrians, but those people never noticed Syrians in their country when we were inventing the iPhone. Not to mention all of Western civilization. There are forces that want to estrange people from their homeland and dissolve national identities altogether. Obama and other criminals are trying to make Syrians a people without a nation. A people without a nation suffer the worst humiliation. Look at what happened to the Palestinian people. One day it could happen to you. So defending your nationality doesn't mean disrespecting the nationality of others. By demonizing Syrian refugees, right-wing nationalists are handing liberal interventionists moral victory on a silver platter. People are sympathetic to that boy and his family, and any group that demonizes them comes off as being sociopaths and alienate everyone. For example, this UKIP politician had to apologize for his statement, the little Syrian boy was well clothed and well fed. He died because his parents were greedy for the good life in Europe. Syrians had the good life before the UK government interfered.
Your home?
Nothing. I don't have a home.
And what happened to your business in Aleppo? Does it exist anymore?
No, it's not existed anymore.
Everything gone?
Now he will give you. I am in production here. Now you will give me. قبل 4 سنين.
قبل 4 سنين. لا ما فيني بس اتذكر حياتي 4 سنين. كتير كنا عايشين أمان.
Yes, in Syria I had my own car. It's like a car you can't drive. It's really hard to drive in this car. We still don't have a good job to buying a good car like in Syria.
الحمد لله كان كويس منيح يعني وضعنا المالي، وكنت ربة منزل وزوجي عم يشتغل الحمد لله. بس بعدين انتقلنا، صارت شوي مشاكل، انتقلنا على الضيعة، قلنا يعني الضيعة ما فيها شيء. بعدين صارت الحرب بالضيعة، اجت جبهة النصرة مسكوه شهر، اخذوه شهر، كسروا له فكوا.
نقعد نتذكر نحن وياهم سوا يعني انه بيتنا كذا، بنحكي هيك شغلات مشان يضل الانسان يعني او الطفل في حنين لوطنه، يعني ما ينسى، خاصة هون معي اطفال يعني.
People ask me, why don't the Syrians stay in Turkey? Well, Syrians who are used to a high standard of living get tired of 3 years in a tent in Turkey with no prospects of a future. Numbers are very high in the million, and conditions are bad. Turkey won't improve these conditions, but want to continue sending terrorists to Syria. People are also asking, why aren't Syrians being helped by other Muslim countries? Well, Turkey and Jordan have taken $1 million each. What these people are really asking is, why aren't the rich Gulf Arab states accepting Syrian refugees? Because in the words of this Kuwaiti politician, we Syrians have a different culture and ethnicity to Arabs. They don't see Syrians as Arab, and they don't accept them as their kin. Since when have the Gulf lifted a finger to help Palestinians anyway? While it is true the people of the Levant have as little in common culturally with Arabs as they do with West Europe, this doesn't change the fact that it is the Gulf Arab states that caused the Syrian problem by backing terrorists. They won't invest in helping Syrian refugees because they are busy spending the money on ISIS and buying golden toilets. But why doesn't Israel take any refugees? After all, it's on Syria's border and it's in the Levant, Syrian people's historical land. Israel is grayed out in this image, as if it doesn't even warrant consideration. I guess Israel is the only country in the world that's allowed to be racist. It's funny to hear Zionists talk about how Europe needs to accept Syrian refugees when they won't even let Palestinian refugees return to their own homes and villages. I've also heard, why Germany, not Greece? Well, I'll let this Syrian refugee tell you.
والسبب هو انه ما تميت باليونان لانه ما بتقدم اي مساعدات ولا فيها شغل، لانه هي يعني ما خرجت تساعد شعبها لتساعدنا.
The most honorable are the Syrians still in Syria fighting for their country. But how can one blame those that run if they themselves aren't fighting with a gun in their hand? It's time to point that finger inward. Save your nation and stop your governments from starting these wars.